Hi, it's Jen the Liberty Lion, and this video is concerning this paper that I got in the mail. I paid $5 and I waited about 2 weeks for it to come in the mail. There is a article in here I wanted to read by Russell Mokibber, and it's called "Pardon Me?" Trump lets the corporate criminals off the hook. So this is May-June 2025. I paid $5 for it. There's a website, and I think it's called capitolhillcitizen.com or something like that. I don't see the website on here, and I don't recall exactly what it was, but probably if you Google Capitol Hill Citizen, and it looks like this. Okay, so I want you to think back, if you've watched my previous videos, about when I talked about the mission statements set by the military. So now I'm familiar with the military side of things, and I'm sort of a little bit familiar with the civilian working with the military side of things. But when it comes to corporations working with the government, I'm not too familiar with those aspects, other than a little bit with military contractors and how contractors go to work with the government as far as the military aspect of things. If they have other things that they do, I don't know about those. So that's just, full disclosure. But here in this article, they're talking about how they're reducing the size of some offices, and it says in here that they're reducing their funded employees, right? So it talks about mandates. So when the United States of America, the states, passes a law for the United States, it's called a mandate. Like, it's something that they have to do. They have to institute it. Well, if they're given a mandate to do a thing, they have to fund it also. So the money comes from the states and it comes to the United States. So it comes from the United States of America. That's why the enacting clause is something like being enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, that whatever. And then you have, I showed you the enacting clause for the United States. It's the United States and Congress assembled. And then they pass the laws for, as far as I know, the military. So the United States of America tells the United States what to do, and when it does, it's called a mandate, but the mandates have to be funded. Okay, so in reducing the cost or the size of these offices, and it probably has more to do with technological advancements and needing less actual people to do the work than it does anything else. But so that when it's talking about mandates and things in the article, then now you know where we're going with this, right? So, pardon me, ? Trump lets the corporate criminals off the hook. Okay, so I'm going to have to change to page 5 during this reading, so you'll have to bear with me. By Russell Mokibber. Donald Trump is shutting down law enforcement across the country. His first move was to put all foreign bribery law enforcement on hold. Then he started shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and firing almost all of its staff. Okay, I have something to say about this. I've complained to the CFPB on issues before as far as consumer protection goes, and I never hear anything back. He also mentions the SEC have not done anything with them, but the Attorney General, who you're supposed to be able to complain to for certain things, like insurance fraud or, any other thing having to do with them. I've complained to them about some things, and I've never heard anything back from them either. But continuing with the article, then Trump offered $50,000 to all staff of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, perhaps the premier corporate law enforcement agency, to retire early. About 600 SEC employees, 12% of the 4,400 staff, took him up on the offer. Quote, with growing concern, we fear that we are watching the SEC face a death of 1,000 cuts, end quote. The shadow SEC, a group of prominent securities law professors, said in a statement last week, quote, no, we do not mean that the SEC is likely to be abolished by either executive or legislative action. Rather, we mean that the SEC is on the verge of being shrunk by both budget cuts and mandated staff reductions, while it is losing the traditional independence as an executive order now requires any, page 5, policy decision to be approved in advance by the Office of Management and Budget. Okay, I talked about the Office of Management and Budget also in some of my videos. And there's a website. And if you go to the website, it's linked to the executive office. It's linked to the White House. So it's, as far as I know, one of the few websites that are actually linked to the executive office directly. Okay, or I should rephrase that and say it's one of the only offices, one of the few offices that are linked to the executive office. Okay, so that should tell us something, that the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, is under the executive. Okay, so the end result might be a shell of its former self, and the SEC becomes an agency with little power, capacity, or independent judgment. Then, for the first time in history, Trump fired commissioners at multiple independent agencies, denying them quorums and the ability to perform core agency functions. In my opinion, this is just giving corporations more power, more freedom to do whatever it is they want. This breathtaking power grab is a slap in the face to Congress, which deliberately designed these agencies to be independent of the president. Okay, but the money comes from the United States of America, and the president has two offices: the executive of the United States of America and the commander-in-chief of the United States. Two different offices, one person. So how is he doing an executive order, ordering civilians, when he has to do that from the Office of the United States of America, and orders are supposed to be for the military under the Office of the United States? So are they cross-contaminating the two titles? So yeah, you have president, but really he has two titles: executive of the United States of America and commander-in-chief of the United States. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Who is he ordering? Because a civilian cannot order civilians. A civilian, such as one who has a title of commander-in-chief, who has served and has that military capacity, can order other military people, but he's using an executive order to order civilian offices to do things. Okay, so that is supposed to be, the way I understand it all, that's supposed to come from the Congress of the United States of America, and then the Congress of the United States can't just by itself decide we're not going to do that. That has to come from the United States of America, and the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's also the president of the United States. Remember, two political communities at one seat, which is Washington, D.C., but two different Congresses with different qualifications. Okay, so let's see, where are we? dependent of the president. Public citizens, Rob Weissman said, public citizen claims that Trump unlawfully fired the Federal Trade Commission's 2 Democratic commissioners. Yes, because if you're a civilian working with the government, getting hired and fired is a congressional act. It's not a presidential act. So the president can't hire or fire people who work as public servants with the government. Now, maybe his staff he can hire and fire, but that's under the executive and not under Congress, because the orders to do things come from the United States of America to the United States, and then from the United States to all the different departments of the United States. So the Congress is deciding what needs to go where, who needs to go where, in order to complete the mission, the goals, and objectives of the United States of America that are given to the United States. So the president is then supposed to make sure that everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. He's not supposed to hire or fire people. He should go to Congress and say, this is not happening, we need to fix this, or this other thing is going on and it's not supposed to be going on. All the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, Trump's deadly deregulation is putting at risk thousands of American workers. Okay, so OSHA and many of these other offices are policies. Title 12 Banks and Banking, Title 6 Domestic Security, Title 26 Internal Revenue Code, Title 23 Highways, 20 whatever it is, Department of Education. All of these are policies. They're not laws, okay? We've talked about that, the positive laws and the positive law citations and stuff. So he says that it's sort of like saying that without this overseeing community, Department of Labor overseeing all these little things done, and corporations, that all of a sudden corporations are not going to do what they're supposed to do. But that's not exactly true, because there's so many corporations nowadays. People have a choice of where they want to work. So if you're looking at getting a job somewhere, you may want to look at their accident program. How many deaths have they had in the last year? And you might decide you don't want to work there. So the fact that they can't find good employees would encourage them to have a better program, instead of having the federal government come in and force people to have programs and then charge them if, you know, something doesn't go right. So now, some of you know that I have a degree in occupational safety and health, and so I was an inspector, an accident investigator, and did all these things. And so I know about OSHA, and I know about the warrant process. So the Department of Labor, they can get warrants for workplaces on federal lands, but if you're off federal lands, they can't exactly, it's not easy for them to get a warrant, and I don't think it's even possible legally for any agency regulated by policy to get a warrant for any corporation that's not working with the federal government directly. Okay, so they tell us, well, if you don't let them come in, they'll say, well, we'll get a warrant and we'll come back and then we'll be extra hard on you as an incentive for you to not challenge them. So that's what they teach us. But having studied this stuff and on my own, I've learned that you can't actually get a warrant unless they get a warrant from a judge that's not an actual judge, right? And we know that those exist. They exist at Department of Homeland Security. They exist at the IRS tax offices in the districts throughout the country. These judges are not federal judges, and a lot of them aren't, and that's why they're saying habeas corpus. Now, I think Napolitano came out and said, well, this is the definition of habeas corpus, blah, 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 but the definition of a habeas corpus is to bring the body. So you can bring the body in front of a federal judge. So you're challenging their jurisdiction. An estimated 140,587 U.S. workers died from hazardous working conditions in 2023. This amounts to roughly 385 workplace-related deaths a day. While mourning these lives lost, some of these lives are lost due to natural causes. Okay, so they don't distinguish that in here. I know of a guy who had a heart attack and then fell off a boat, and so I don't know, did they consider that a workplace injury or not? While mourning these lives lost, there is also reason to fear this death toll will only rise due to the aggressive Trump administration attacks on basic health and safety protections long taken for granted in most U.S. workplaces. Okay, so it was, I think, on the Salenti show at Napolitano, one or the other of them said something about, well, he's reducing all of the things that are helpful to the regular people out there. And that may be true, but then I ask, well, why isn't he reducing taxes? Why isn't he reducing the Internal Revenue Office? And I know they've had like 80,000 people let go, but they let them go every year, and they're going to let a lot of people go due to the technological advancements in the AI, and that's the, the Musk thing. So all of these policies need to be reduced and really just eliminated, and let the states go ahead and take control of their own programs in their state. You can have a state OSHA office, and you can have a state education department and state highway departments and all that kind of stuff without having two federal taxes is basically what it amounts to. Having two taxes by the state and calling one a different name, calling it a federal tax when it's really just a state tax. According to the Economic Policy Institute, Trump has issued dozens of executive orders to roll back or review existing regulations, all policies, none of them laws, including an order directing agencies, including the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to eliminate 10 existing protections before enacting any new guidelines. Okay, he has also, so now they called them guidelines, regulations, guidelines, okay? He has also effectively eliminated the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, the sole agency responsible for research and that informs OSHA policymaking with evidence-based assessments of injury and fatality risk and actionable guidance for employers to use to improve safety, and closed down 11 OSHA offices in states with highest workplace fatality rates. And he has eliminated 34 offices of Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA, which protects coal miners from hazards like black lung disease, and paused a new rule on silica exposure to prevent coal miner disease and death from silicosis. And silicosis also occurs in a lot of the refineries. Now, Trump wants to zero out the Public Company Accountability Oversight Board, PCAOB. That's the industry-funded agency, okay? It's an industry-funded agency that regulates the accounting industry. The Big Four auditing firms, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, are not happy with the PCAOB because sometimes it does its job and fines the firms for their defective audits of public companies. And 25 years ago, a wave of defective audits across the country culminated in the bankruptcies of Enron and WorldCom, rocking the financial markets, destroying tens of thousands of jobs, and decimating the retirement savings of millions of Americans. Why wouldn't it happen again? Like clockwork, it will happen again unless the PCAOB is allowed to do its job. Unless, of course, we're getting ready to transfer to a new currency, and the currency itself will be able to track all these things that are being done by these companies that are wrongdoings, right? So, I mean, if we went back to gold and silver, I'm not sure how that would work. I don't think it would work with having um, public corporations and a stock market, right? And if we went to a digital currency, all the currency is going to be tracked. So why do we need all these positions if the currency is going to satisfy those jobs, if you know what I mean? So it's like they can track the currency to see where the currency is going, to see if money's being laundered, or see if it's going to companies that have bad practices, or, you know, workplace injuries or whatever, right? So I'm not sure how it will work, but it seems like if we're getting ready to move into a different currency, which we know that Trump has been talking about, then maybe all of these things don't need to have, we don't need all of these things, because the currency itself will do the work. In early May, a group of former SEC officials, PCAOB advisory committee members, and former auditors wrote to congressional leaders asking them to sync the legislation that would merge the PCAOB and the SEC into the SEC. Again, reducing offices and employees. Because now you have two separate offices that are going to do basically one set of things, and probably included some technological advancements, you know, AI and meta-analysis and all that. Then the group said that the bill, quote, would eliminate the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, purportedly to folding its functions into Securities and Exchange Commission's, SEC, but without ensuring any increase in funding or staffing at the SEC to fulfill those vital functions, end quote. And then, quote, if adopted, the bill would have a devastating impact on the accuracy and reliability of financial reporting on which investor protection and the health and integrity of our financial markets rely, end quote, they wrote. Okay, so just what I said. Along the way, Trump has been pardoning a slew of white-collar criminals, figures. But not only is Trump pardoning individual white-collar criminals, but in a first, he has pardoned a corporation that was convicted of a crime. Okay, so as you all know, I don't support any politician. I have no love for Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians. I have problems with all of them. There's probably not but maybe two politicians ever that I actually kind of support. So if you're a MAGA person, if you're a Democrat, doesn't matter to me. You have your opinions. I have mine. I'm not a MAGA person. So earlier this year, BitMEX was fined $100 million for violating the Bank Secrecy Act by willingly failing to establish, implement, and maintain an adequate anti-money laundering and know your customer program. While the mainstream press reported that Trump pardoned the three founders of crypto exchange BitMEX and another executive, they didn't report the historic first. Trump pardoned the corporation BitMEX. Quote, when I look at the pardon of BitMEX, I see an opening for the opportunity for a lobbying frenzy for pardons for corporate criminals, end quote, said the Public Citizen's Rick Claypool. Quote, there is a new reward for them on the table. They can have their criminal records totally wiped out, end quote. In a report Public Citizen released earlier this year, Corporate Clemency, How Trump is Halting Enforcement Against Corporate Lawbreakers, Claypool finds that the Trump administration has dropped or halted more than 1 out of 5 prominent investigations into and enforcement actions against corporations in just its first 6 weeks of office, end quote. Whole categories of corporate crime enforcement have come screeching to a halt just weeks into President Donald Trump's second term. Quote, Trump is handing out get out of jail free cards to corporate lawbreakers, end quote. The report found, quote, the consequences for the public when corporations face a diminished threat of enforcement are disastrous. Meanwhile, honest businesses that are not Trump administration insiders or those who refuse to play along with the MAGA agenda may force serious disadvantages from Trump's politicized approach to enforcement, end quote. The Trump administration has already halted or moved to dismiss enforcement investigations and cases against more than 100 corporations, Claypool said. These include all 42 cases of the CFPB, at least 20 investigations and cases under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, at least 15 cases brought by the Civil Rights and Environment and Natural Resources Division at the U.S. Department of Justice, at least 7 cases at the SEC against cryptocurrency corporations, and at least 34 corporations facing enforcement actions that collectively contributed to more than $34 million to Trump's inaugural festivities. So you can see maybe a little bit the problem with having a president over both seats of government. These 34 corporations are facing a total of 60 separate federal investigations and lawsuits. The corporations facing the greatest number of investigations and cases are Tesla, 8, Amazon, 7, Pfizer, 5, Wells Fargo, 4, SpaceX, 4, and United Healthcare, 4, the report found. The report found that more than 100 cases and investigations against corporate misconduct have been halted or dropped by the Trump administration. Public Citizen has put up an enforcement tracker that monitors Trump's stripping of law enforcement. Right now, the tracker is looking at over 500 cases against about 430 corporations. About a fifth of those represent cases that have been dropped or halted. Not that Democratic administrations prior to Trump were exactly tough on corporate crime. In a report released in April, Claypool found that President Joe Biden's Justice Department prosecuted fewer corporate criminals in 2024 than in any previous year over the past 3 decades, including fewer than in Trump's first term. Over the course of Biden's 4-year term, the department prosecuted fewer corporate criminals than any previous president's 4-term as far back as the first Clinton administration. The prosecution of only 80 corporations in 2024, a 29% drop from the previous fiscal year, clapped off a weak term by Attorney General Merrick Garland and Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, who vowed to ramp up enforcement against corporate crime and failed. Garland and Monaco's department continued to rely on corporate leniency agreements and declinations, allowing corporations that admit to criminal misconduct, including harassment, financial crime, fraud, and bribery, to avoid prosecution. According to the report, among the corporations that avoided prosecution through leniency agreements during Biden's final year in office were Morgan Stanley, Wynn Las Vegas, and eBay. The Biden administration's broken promise to crack down on corporate crime was a tragic missed opportunity to restore faith in the Justice Department by demonstrating that the wealthy and powerful are not above the law. Claypool said, now that Trump is in power, there's every reason to expect a drop-off in corporate enforcement from the already low Biden baseline. And on November 19, 2024, President-elect Donald Trump watches a SpaceX rocket launch with Elon Musk in Boca Chica, Texas. In November 2024, Musk called for the elimination of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Trump then proceeded to eliminate it. Okay. Again, this is Capitol Hill Citizen, May-June 2025. The price is $5. You can find it and order it online. Okay. So like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be doing more videos.